February 28, 2026, the United States launched an attack on Iran. What was the Iran's response? It closed the Strait of Hormuz. What was the consequence? Japan. 90% of energy imports gone overnight. Factories halt. China. 40% renewable electricity. Factories keep running. Philippines. Food prices doubled. National emergency declared. China. Electrified railway. 99% electric buses. EVs everywhere. Everything is still moving. Thailand. Fishing fleets grounded. Marine food price rise up 250%. An entire industry shutting down. 1% of GDP gone. China, 6 energy sources. Absorb the shock. 4 countries, same crisis, completely different outcomes. What does China know that the rest of the world doesn't? The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most critical energy choke points on the Earth. This narrow waterways carries more than 20% of the oil and natural gas every single day. By closing it, Iran isn't just targeting one enemy, but it's putting pressure on the entire global economy at once. The consequences are immediate. Oil price surged by as much as 50% in just weeks. Food gets expensive, transportation costs climb, and almost everything you buy starts to cost more. Countries began drawing down their strategic reserves. Some have enough for 3 months. But what if this doesn't end in 3 months? If the strait stays closed for more than 6 months, oil could reach up to $180 a barrel, nearly 3 times of the normal price. Food prices in some countries will double. Also, food price will rise. Supply chains will fracture. Factories will shut down because they cannot get the energy and raw materials they need to operate. Layoffs also follow. We could be looking at inflation worse than 2008, a global recession, a potential 3% drop in world GDP. And unlike the financial crash, the effects could remain for years. But is this the first time that world faced such a disruption? In October 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, Arab oil-producing nations imposed a full embargo on countries that supported Israel. It lasted 6 months. The result? Oil prices increased 4 times, jumping from $3 a barrel to $12. Western countries fell into recession. Long lines at gas stations became the symbol of the new era. That crisis changed everything. It gave birth to the concept of energy security. Before 1973, oil was treated as cheap and reliable, almost invisible. After 1973, energy became a strategic asset. Governments created strategic petroleum reserves. They began diversifying into nuclear energy, coal, and early renewables. Oil-producing nations gained enormous geopolitical power. And since then, over the past 5 decades, we have seen disruption after disruption. The 1979 Iranian Revolution, the Gulf War, the Iraq War, the Arab Spring, the COVID pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine war. Each one sent shockwaves through global energy markets. But here is what is different today. These events are happening more frequently, and their impact are becoming more severe, which is exactly why the energy security is more important today than ever. So, what exactly is energy security? At its core, energy security means having reliable access to sufficient energy at affordable prices. But there is a second concept that goes hand in hand with it: energy resilience. Energy security asks, can you get the energy you need? Energy resilience asks, can you survive when that supply is suddenly cut off? Both matter, and as we will see, most of the world is dangerously exposed on both fronts. To understand the scale of the problem, we need to look at where the world is getting the energy today. Despite decades of investment in alternatives, the global economy still runs on fossil fuels. More than 80% of all primary energy consumed worldwide still comes from oil, gas, and coal. Without fossil fuels, we wouldn't just lose convenience. We would lose electricity, heat, transportation, and industrial production. The modern world would effectively stop. Even our electricity, the energy form we consider clean, is still 65% dependent on fossil fuels. Coal remains the single largest source of electricity generation globally. Wind and solar are growing fast, but they still represent a small fraction of total output. And here is where the geopolitical risk becomes clear. Fossil fuels don't exist everywhere. They are concentrated in a few regions of the Earth. Most countries don't have them, so they have no choice but to import from the countries that they have. And that dependency transforms energy from an economic issue into a geopolitical one. The natural gas picture is even more concentrated. Russia alone supplies a massive share of Europe's gas, a vulnerability that became painfully clear after the 2022 Ukraine invasion. And coal, while often overlooked, is still a critical import for major Asian economies. Now look at this map. Japan, 90% dependency on fossil fuels, and 90% of that fossil fuels is imported from Strait of Hormuz. South Korea, 90%, India, 85%, China, 65%, Europe, around 18%. The closure of Hormuz wouldn't just be a disruption for these countries. For Japan, it would mean losing up to 80% of its entire energy supply. That's not a disruption, that's a shutdown. Higher import dependency equals higher exposure to crisis. And this is exactly what we call it single point of failure. So, what can countries and businesses actually do? The answer comes down in four interconnected pillars. The first is diversification, not just diversifying energy sources, oil, gas, nuclear, renewables, but also diversifying suppliers and trade routes, so that no single choke points like Hormuz can hold you hostage. The second is electrification, shifting transportation, industry, and buildings away from direct fossil fuel use and onto electricity. This matters because electricity can be generated from almost any sources, giving you flexibility that burning oil simply doesn't. The third is renewable energy. Solar, wind, hydro, biogas, and wave generate power locally. They reduce the need to import from politically unstable regions. They don't pass through choke points. And the fourth is decentralization. Instead of depending entirely on large centralized power systems, energy is generated closer to where it's consumed. Rooftop solar, microgrids, distributed storage. These make communities and businesses far more resilient when central power fails. The renewable energies alone is the answer? No. Renewables depend on the weather, time of day, and geography. The sun doesn't always shine. The wind doesn't always blow. What the world needs is an optimized energy mix. A system where different sources complement each other based on local conditions, demand patterns, and geopolitical realities. After the 1973 crisis, countries understood this and began diversifying, but the transition has been painfully slow. Even today, fossil fuels still account for over 80% of global energy consumption. But some countries move faster than others. China understood the threat and acted on it. In 2005, China was almost entirely dependent on coal. It was one of the most energy vulnerable major economies on Earth. 2 decades later, China has nearly 40% renewable energy and six major energy sources contributing meaningfully to its grid. In transportation, the results are extraordinary. In 2020, new energy vehicles were just 5% of car sales in China. By early 2025, nearly 50%. Their urban bus fleet is 99% electric. Over 120,000 kilometers of electrified railways. Industrial electrification reaching 30%. This isn't theory, this is what a practical energy mix actually looks like when executed at a scale. And the result, when the Hormuz conflict happened, China was positioned almost better than any other importers. Energy security is not just a national policy challenge, it's increasingly a business and operational necessity. For factories, manufacturers, and industrial businesses, energy is not just a cost on your balance sheet. It is continuity. It is the difference between operating and shutting down. And in a world where disruptions are coming faster and hitting harder, relying on a single energy source, a single supplier, or a single route is no longer a manageable risk. Resilience comes from balance, from building the right mix for your specific situation. But what does actually look like in practice? What strategies are leading countries and companies using right now? And more importantly, what should your business do? That's exactly what we will break down in next video. Make sure you are subscribed because the next video goes deep into the solutions. We'll look at what works, what doesn't, and what the numbers actually tell us. See you there.